This is a little update on what's been going on up north. I had done maybe a couple months ago an update on some of the gang-related shootings that have been taking place in Uptown and in the Edgewater neighborhood at the North Pole. And the police had issued an alert to the community about, some of the gangs that were going back and forth. The territories that were involved were territories of the Hoolies, territories of Day Day World. Some of them were the territories of the Lokes up in Rogers Park, but the police were not sure if they were actually involved in what's been going on. But anyways, there was another shooting that just took place last week in that area. Man, there were 4 people wounded in a gang-related shooting they said in Uptown on Saturday afternoon, according to Chicago police and law enforcement sources. The gunman was suspected of firing shots in another part of Uptown just minutes before the shooting, but no one was injured there. Both incidents occurred in a near 4 gang violence hotspots that Chicago police officers were told in July carried the strong possibility of retaliatory shooting. So the Hoolies territory and Day Day World's territory are the two hot ones. Day Day World is GD's over by Thorndale and Winthrop, and Hooligang. This is an area you guys have seen in a lot of my videos by Wilson Magnolia. That area is really hot. It's probably the hottest part of Uptown, and it's right there in front of Truman College and by the L. So if you're a civilian around that spot, just be aware of that because there have been innocent people hit up over there. I think the maintenance man over at Truman College was hit like in the head with a bullet at one point. He was just coming out to school like in the middle of the day. That's a Stone's block right there, man. BPSN. Lil Four Mob, the Four Corner Hustlers, and the Vice Lords are just across Broadway on the other side over by Hazel and Sunnyside. But those guys, the latest uptick in violence, I don't really think they've been involved in that too much. But anyway, Saturday shooting began around 12:28 p.m. See, this is in the middle of the day over in the 900 block of West Wilson. So there were 2 men wearing yellow, and another guy was wearing a black hoodie. They arrived in a Toyota RAV4 and fired shots toward a teenage boy in the area. The teen escaped injury, and the gunman fled toward Lakeshore Drive in the SUV. Less than 5 minutes later, men wearing black and yellow hoodies walked up to the intersection of Winthrop and Argyle. Now that is over by... that's not right by Day Day World's territory. I mean, it's not Day Day World's territory right there. It's kind of a little bit south of that. So that territory right there, I think, no, that's not GD's over there. I think that might be another set of Stones. This one might have been some other, guys that were just caught like in that neighborhood, but weren't actually from there. I don't know. 4 people were wounded though. A 26-year-old woman was seated in a wheelchair. She suffered a gunshot wound to her face, and a 28-year-old woman was struck in the shoulder and head, and a 43-year-old man and a 61-year-old woman received gunshot wounds to their legs. Chicago police said the victims were all initially reported in good condition, which is really surprising. The woman in the chair got hit in the face with a shot, and she's in good condition. I don't know if that report is accurate. Hopefully it is, man. But after the shooting, the men returned to the RAV4, which had temporary license plates in the rear window when they fled. A cop that was at the scene described the gunmen as black men who stood about 5'7" or 5'8". The one wearing a black hoodie also wore blue rubber gloves. The officer said the one wearing the yellow hoodie had a gray hoodie under it. The police also recovered a firearm from one of the victims. According to an initial CPD report, 18 people have been shot in Uptown this year, compared to 14 at this point last year and 16 as of this date in 2021. There were 14 at this time in 2020 and 11 in 2019. So there's been 18 people shot in Uptown this year, man. So far, in late July, Chicago police were warned about 4 Northside gang hotspots. This is according to CWB Chicago, that the department had identified as being ripe for retaliatory shootings between gangster disciples in Rogers Park and the Wicked City faction of the Black P-Stones in the South. Now, Day Day World is not, I don't think, Rogers Park. I think that's technically Edgewater. I forget where the exact, but I think the North Pole is like all one big area. You know what I'm saying? West Ridge, Rogers Park, Edgewater, Uptown. I think it is all as like one area, even like parts of South Evanston. But I forget where the exact boundaries of these neighborhoods are at, man. So they said that's Rogers Park. I think that might be Edgewater. But anyways, they said Ardmore to Granville, Broadway to Sheridan, Morris to Juneway, Clark to Sheridan, Foster to Lawrence, Broadway to Sheridan. And by the way, Morris to Juneway and Clark to Sheridan, PBG is right over there. But that's kind of like that's kind of like outside their territory. That kind of like expands an area like beyond their territory. Like Clark, that really is Kings over on Clark. You know what I'm saying? And then all the way east to Sheridan, they're not really at Sheridan like that. You know what I'm saying? They're over by Farwell and Ashland. And then Morris and Ashland. So they're kind of in that neighborhood over there. But I mean, technically, yeah. But anyways, Foster to Lawrence. So L-Dub and all the GDs that are over there, TFG and all them, they're literally right across from the Hoolies. Okay, so then Montrose to Lawrence and Broadway to Clark. So these are pretty broad areas. I mean, they're basically talking about all of Uptown and Rogers Park. So Saturday's first shooting attempt in the 900 block of West Wilson was just east of the 4th area, and the mass shooting occurred within the 3rd area. So, anyways, just so you guys know, man, up north is really hot, man. And guys, I always get this, in the comment section, and people like going back and forth, talking about how hot up north is. Up north right now is hot. There was a guy asking me in the comment section about maybe like a couple weeks ago. He was like, he's saying he's a young black dude. He's thinking of moving to Chicago. What part should he move to? I said the north side, but the northwest side. I said avoid Uptown and Rogers Park if you can. I said, probably you're good over there because, like I said, these dudes know who they're looking for. But if you're a young black guy, they might check you to see where you're from. And then if you tell them you ain't from nowhere, like, you gotta just hope they believe you. So I would avoid those 2 areas, but northwest side, anything, like I said, north of Armitage and like west of Damen, really. Oh, north of Armitage and west of Damen, if you're a young black guy. Now, if you're a young Hispanic guy, there's parts of the northwest side where you could run into problems like Belmont, Cragen, Humboldt Park. That's why I said north of Armitage, because anywhere south of Armitage, you get into Humboldt Park, and that's kind of dicey. So you want to stay north of that, and then west of. Well, if you're young and Hispanic, Belmont, Cragen, you got to avoid. Beyond that, you're pretty good in most of the northwest side. I mean, there's Hispanic gangs all through the northwest side. Like, technically, even my neighborhood has like Eagles and Insane Deuces and stuff. But that means, relatively speaking, like, they're really not on anything around here. I mean, they're not, like, there's shootings every now and then, but a lot of this is from guys even from outside the neighborhood, and a lot of it's like robbery related and stuff. The gang related stuff around here, you're pretty good, man. Lakeview is a good spot if you're, young black Latino guy looking for a spot. Portage Park, Sauganash. Sauganash is probably kind of expensive, but Edison Park, Irving Park, Montclair, these are all like relatively safe areas. If you're not involved in the stuff over there, and there's guys that are, but if you're not involved in that stuff, it's not the type of area where there's going to be like, where you from, and then, you just say, I'm from this block or whatever, I'm over here, and then they just, start blowing. Like, it's not Little Village, it's not Back of the Yards, what I'm saying? It's not areas like that. You don't really hear about that stuff around here, man. So that's my recommendation. But Uptown and Rogers Park is a different story, man. It is hot over there. When I was living in East Rogers Park, man, it had a higher rate than I think Woodlawn. And Woodlawn is where FBG and, the GDs that are, real famous for being into the O Block, that's where they're at. East Rogers Park had a higher murder rate than their neighborhood back when I was living there. It was hot, bro. I mean, it was like real hot. The Stones and the GDs were at it. Now, it's flaring back up. It like comes and goes. There's times when it is, there's times when it's not. It's not. Howard Street is not what it used to be. Back in the 90s and early 2000s, that was real shady back then. But now, you're still gonna see those guys out there. You know what I'm saying? And like, when the ops come through, nobody's asking politely for all the civilians to please get out of the way. Like, guys just come through blowing. So you do have to be aware of that around there, especially if you got kids, which is why, shout out to those people that Native Sons group that was asking the gangs to at least have a truce between the hours when the kids are walking home from school, because kids are getting hit left and right. That young, what was he, 5? They got his nickname was Boom, the little kid that got hit over there and killed. I mean, this happens to little kids over there, man. So yeah, you do have to be aware. If you're a young black guy, I would move to the north side, but avoid those 2 neighborhoods. Same thing if you're a young Hispanic guy. Those 2 neighborhoods, and Belmont, Cragen too, for Hispanic guys. That's my advice, guys. Your boy Chicago News. I'm out.